you ever noticed how much symmetry is hidden in the pattern on the leaves to the repeating tiles on the floor? Symmetry appears everywhere in nature and in physics. And today we're going to talk about one of the mathematicians who related symmetry to some of the laws that govern the universe. But first, let's take a step back. Emmy Noether was born to a scientific family in southern Germany. Her father, Max Noether, was an accomplished mathematician who worked at the University of Erlangen on the theory of algebra and
She was one of the most
and
influential
two of her three younger
mathematicians in
brothers
history.
became
Though
scientists.
her path into
Fritz was a
mathematics is anything
mathematician,
but
and
symmetric
Alfred earned a
and
doctorate in chemistry.
But even with her family background, Emmy faced barrier after barrier.
Girls weren't even allowed in the gymnasium, the college prep school. So Noether studied arithmetic and language at the instead. So she actually could have become a language teacher.
She was certified to teach English and French in girls' schools in 1990, but she didn't want the life that society expected from women. She wanted mathematics and physics.
So she decided to take a massive risk and pursue mathematics. She headed to the University of Erlangen, even though women could only audit classes at first and weren't permitted to enroll at the university.
Then, with much determination, she passed an entrance exam and enrolled at the University of Göttingen for a semester. There, she encountered notable and respected mathematicians Hermann Minkowski, known for introducing space-time geometry to physics, Felix Klein, who was a leader of group theory, and later David Hilbert, one of the most influential mathematicians.
Göttingen was the leading university in mathematics at the time, but even there, many professors believed women simply didn't belong in the field.
And later, she entered the University of Erlangen in 1904, when it finally accepted women students.
She completed her dissertation titled One Complete System of Invariants for Terminary Quadratic Forms, and received her PhD with honors in July 1908.
Many women at universities couldn't even teach, so from 1908 to 1915, she worked at the Mathematical Institute of Erlangen without pay, teaching under her father and doing high-level research. Then, two mathematical giants, Felix Klein and David Hilbert, invited her back to Göttingen in 1915 because they needed her help understanding the math behind Einstein's new theory of relativity.
Hilbert and Klein realized something incredible, that Emmy Noether was one of the only people in the world who deeply understood the algebra needed to make sense of Einstein's equations.
Noether analyzed the structure of gravitational field equations and discovered that Einstein's theory naturally produced conservation laws, but only if you understood them through the lens of symmetry.
Her work was so important that Hilbert argued that she should be given a faculty position. But even with Hilbert backing her, the faculty refused to hire her.
So Hilbert signed her classes under his name and secretly let her teach. She became a licensed instructor who could receive fees from students but not the university.
Eventually, in 1922, she was given the unofficial title of associate professor, but with no job security, no benefits, and barely any pay.
One of the most amazing parts of Noether's life was the way that she supported other women in mathematics. Even before she officially held a teaching position, she spent countless hours tutoring female students who weren't even allowed in classrooms.
At Göttingen, women weren't welcome in most courses, so they went to Noether. She held informal seminars in her home.
And when she finally reached Bryn Mawr in the US, she immediately built a community of women mathematicians around her. She mentored doctoral students and postdoctoral scholars, all women, and pushed them to do research.
She created a space where women were taken seriously as mathematicians, something incredibly rare in the early 20th century.
Noether didn't only face difficulties because of her gender. When Hitler came to power in 1933, all Jewish faculty were fired, including Noether. On April 7, 1933, Noether was formally notified that she could no longer teach at the university.
So Noether fled to the United States, where she continued to research and teach math and physics. She became a visiting professor of mathematics at Bryn Mawr College.
Noether didn't just research physics, she also mentored. She supervised more than a dozen graduate students at Göttingen, including some who made major scientific discoveries, including Hans Witting and Otto Schilling. But she was forced to work in conjunction with Edmund Landau because she was not allowed to supervise dissertations on her own.
Her compassion for students was never limited by the classroom or what she was assigned. Once, when the school building was closed, she gathered the class on the steps outside the building and led them through the woods to a local coffee shop, where she held a lecture, And after she was fired from the university, she invited her students to her house to discuss their future plans.
She didn't even limit her support to those who politically agreed with her. She mentored Werner Weber before he became a key figure in driving Jewish professors out of their jobs, including her.
All depend on Noether's theorem.
When we talk today about the conservation of momentum, the conservation of energy, we're literally using Noether's work.
She laid the foundation of modern abstract algebra too. Her work connects number theory, logic, and physics. Symmetry in physics is way more than an object's appearance, and whether it looks the same on both sides, like this leaf. A symmetry is any time that you take an object and apply any transformation to it, yet it remains the same in a certain regard.
Like this pathway, if we slide everything over a little bit, it still looks the same. That's translation symmetry.
Or rotational symmetry, like this water bottle. If I spin it a bit, it still looks the same. Rose is rotating around this chair. If Rose were to start here, she would have the same forces acting on her. Gravity, the normal force, and she would be moving at the same velocity as if Rose were to start here and rotate around the chair. This is an example of rotational symmetry, meaning if you were to project Rose forward in her rotation, these factors would remain constant.
Here's the cool part. Noether realized that whenever a physical system has symmetry, something is conserved.
For every continuous symmetry, there is a corresponding conservation law.
Noether determined that an object has symmetry if the total energy remains the same. For example, if you take an object and shift it x meters to the right, if the energy is constant, then the system is translationally symmetric. And if you hang a pendulum, then move the whole setup 2 meters to the right, then the motion doesn't change. Same swing, same speed.
That's spatial translation symmetry. And the conserved quantity here,
Momentum!
While this may seem obvious, an object is not always translationally symmetric. What if there was a big planet nearby? Then there would be more gravitational pull, and the object would act differently.
There's also rotational symmetry. For example, if the moon is rotated around the planet, if you were to translate that moon over half a rotation, it behaves the same way. That's translational symmetry.
And we can't forget symmetry across time. If we translate something into a different time frame, would it be the same? This could be anything from you dropping your water bottle to the universe being created at a different point.
And here's another example. Say I jump down from this height of 5 meters.
Would Haley reach the same height if she started at t equals 2 or t equals 6?
The answer is yes. And this is because the laws of physics don't change over time. This is called time translational symmetry.
And the conserved quantity associated with time translation is energy.
Exactly, and Noether proved all of that in 1918. In 1921, she transformed algebra with her work in ring theory. It's basically the study of mathematical systems where you can add, subtract, multiply, and still stay within the system.
For example, take the integers. -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. All numbers are integers. There are infinitely many integers, and if you add 2 integers, you get another integer, so it remains constant. This makes them a ring.
But rings don't have to be numbers. They can be polynomials, functions, matrices, etc. Basically any set of objects where those operations still make sense.
The challenge was that mathematicians didn't understand the structure of each ring, even though they know a lot of rings were rings.
Noether solved this. Instead of studying each ring separately, she discovered that a whole class of rings all share the same internal structure.
These are now called Noetherian rings, named after her.
And now they're everywhere in modern math. 100 years later, mathematicians still use her ideas every day.
While Emmy Noether's theories might seem abstract, they really build off what we have been learning in class. For example, the exercise we did where Miss Crowley threw her keys and we tried to throw the Play-Doh at it. Miss Crowley explained that the only force acting on the keys in the Play-Doh when they were in free fall was gravity. Thus, Wherever she threw her keys from, different heights, we still had to aim at the keys the same way, as if they weren't falling. This is because Miss Crowley, translating her keys up and down, did not change the laws of physics or how gravity affects the keys, and so we just needed to act the same way.
Even picking a coordinate system can be related to Emmy Noether's ideas. For example, earlier this year, Miss Crowley gave us a problem where a student was running to Lutnick. When asked to solve, some members of the class picked Lutnick as the origin, while others chose the student's starting point. Both groups found the same change in x and the same change in time, and thus the same velocity. This relates to translational symmetry because it shows how the system behaves the same regardless of whether it starts at x equals 0 or x equals 8.
So Emmy Noether proved that symmetry explains the reason why the universe behaves the way that it does.
Today, every time we learn about conservation laws,
We're also learning about Emmy's work.
and the universe makes a little more sense.
So what if Emmy Noether was born in a different era?
If she was born earlier, she probably wouldn't have been able to study at all.
And if she was born later, she would have held major academic positions, won more awards, and been recognized sooner. Noether met an untimely death on April 14, 1935. She died from complications following surgery on an ovarian cyst, a sudden loss that shocked the mathematical world. But she lives on in her influential research on conservation laws, symmetry, and abstract algebra. After her death, Albert Einstein wrote a tribute praising her as the most significant creative mathematical genius thus far produced since the higher education of women began. Coming from Einstein, the most famous physicist in the world. That meant everything. And yet, during her life, she fought constantly for the right to just exist in mathematics. Excluded from classrooms, denied pay, blocked from promotions, fired for her identity, forced to flee her home. But despite all that, she changed mathematics and physics deeply. Her optimism and brilliance inspired students everywhere she went, especially the young women she mentored at Bryn Mawr, giving them opportunities she never had herself. Today, her work shapes every modern physics theory. Symmetry principles guide quantum mechanics, particle physics, field theory, literally the equations that describe our universe. And her ideas in algebra, like Noetherian rings, still guide mathematics a century later. Her fingerprints are on entire fields of math. Even though her career was short, her legacy is everywhere, in every conservation law, every symmetry argument, every algebra and physics class, even Miss Crowley's.